So here's the question. Most people have problems daily, weekly, monthly, annually. At what point does your problems overcome your mindset to get to your goals, to your dreams, to those big aspirations? That's what we're talking about today.
Welcome to the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversations, and education weekly.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Sales Chatter. And today we are talking about how to overcome a mindset that tells you it's time to stop. How to overcome a mindset that tells you, I don't have this, I don't have enough education, endurance, excitement, energy, whatever the case may be. The fact is you do have enough. And I'm really looking forward to today's conversation because Nick and I have a lot of things in common, and just the baseline of what we're going to talk about, I think will totally change your perspective, number one, and the overall way your philosophy right now works. So Nick, thank you so much for being here, brother. I don't think I can even do justice by introducing you in any which way, shape, or form that you can do the justice. I've watched a lot of the stuff that you've put out there, different podcasts you were on, and I think your story is one of such stickability. It's crazy. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. And I'm an absolute geek when talking about sales, when talking about overcoming obstacles, and definitely when putting them all together.
Yes. And it's like the trifecta.
Literally.
Awesome. Yeah. So for everybody that is watching and listening that has not heard of you, give us a little bit about who Nick is, where you've been, where you've come from, and what the mission is for the next 30 years.
All right. Absolutely. My story in a nutshell is that I'm a 4-time cancer survivor. I'm a type 1 diabetic. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I have 7 herniated discs from 2 different rollover car accidents. I've been in a motorcycle accident. I almost died from meningitis. I went all 12 rounds with COVID. Terrorists even once called in a nerve gas bomb threat on my airplane. And none of that matters because when I became an obstacle course racer, I defied it all and I changed my life. And that's the origin story, because prior to that moment, I had not overcome my adversity. I had only survived it. And throughout the last 7 years, 97 Spartan races, 6 major marathons, and about 30 or 40 other obstacle course and endurance type events is really where I began to learn these lessons in resilience that have been staring me in the face for the last 40 years.
Wow. Like, you literally just gave me goosebumps there, brother. It's one of the best intros I've ever heard, man. That was straight to the point. So 4-time cancer survivor. Let's start there. Our similarities: 1-time cancer survivor, got me on 3. Type 1 diabetic, same thing. So what was the cancer that you survived? And if you don't mind sharing with the audience, how did that change your perspective from 1 to 4?
So let me start by saying this. Let me start with the lesson, which is don't ever compare. Because just how you said, I got you there, I bet I don't. I don't know what kind of cancer you had, but I had thyroid cancer. And compared to other cancers, that's a junior varsity version. And it's a dangerous, dangerous thing to compare yourself to other people because it's cancer. And most people, the only thing they know about cancer is chemo and death. And for the longest time, when I first was diagnosed with cancer, my mindset was that of a victim. Poor me. I had grown up, my life was not like an after school special, but parents of neglect and alcoholism and addiction, and just grew up without money and really I paid my own way through school. I've been working since I was like 8, so I was gritty all along, but at no point did I ever think that I have some sort of, new, fresh perspective on the world. And so when I got cancer the first time, I didn't even want to talk about it because I was scared. I felt bad for myself and I didn't want to admit that. It was like, I wanted to feel bad for myself, but I didn't want anyone else to feel bad for me. And so the first time I got cancer, I had to get radioactive iodine, which those who don't know, it's a pill. It's very non-invasive. It's a pill. It's radioactive though, so you can't be around anybody for like 3 days after that because you are truly radioactive and can give people cancer. So I had to have,
Wow.
yeah, that part was a little bit interesting because here I was 25 years old. It was May. I was living in Massachusetts. So you'll get this. It was springtime. This is the time of year everyone just opens up their doors, kind of like you see in the cartoons, right? All the neighbors look, hey, neighbor, like, and I was
You've been
grounded.
hibernating for so long that you open up. Yeah.
And I was grounded. I couldn't go outside. I couldn't go be around other people. And the thing is that I felt healthy, like I didn't feel sick. So it was kind of a weird feeling, but, um, they took out half of my thyroid in 2005, the first time I got cancer. And then I took that radioactive iodine, and then I have to take a pill every single day for the rest of my life to regulate the functions of the thyroid and to suppress cancer. But 2 years later, I was now living in Florida, starting a new job, new girlfriend, fiance at the time. Everything's going great. And I was following up with my endocrinologist, and then we did an ultrasound, and they kind of pulled one of the, hey, what's that? And sure enough, I knew cancer was back. And so this time, I had already, a couple other things that had already happened during then. I had gotten diagnosed with sleep apnea. I was sleeping with a CPAP. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. I had torn my shoulder playing beach volleyball. I had surgery and then have nerve damage as a result of it. So by the time I got cancer for the second time, I was tired, and I was just mad. I was rageful. I'm like, it was very hard. It was hard to deal with because I wouldn't deal with it. It was just this other thing that was like haunting me. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't even tell my girlfriend and my fiance at the time for a couple of weeks after I got diagnosed because I just didn't want to share about it. And this time though, even though the treatment and the follow-up was the same, it was a lot cleaner. It was just smoother. Like literally the day I got out of the hospital, I went home.
Was it thyroid cancer again?
It was thyroid
like it
cancer.
Just reoccurred?
Again.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, I got back home from surgery from the hospital and I felt good. I literally just went back to work. I was like, okay, maybe we can put this behind us now, and just started living my life. And it was 6 more years until I had a recurrence again. Only this time was different because it was thyroid cancer again, but the tumor is in the back of my neck here, pressed up against the vocal cords, and it's borderline inoperable. And that's what they told me, is they didn't want to operate on it. They talked about a couple other options, one like alcoholic infusion or alcohol induced something rather, about 10 years ago, this happened, but they convinced me to let it just sit there. They said it's not an aggressive cancer and it's going to be more dangerous to take it out than to leave it there. But here's the part of this story that I didn't tell you, is at this point, I was well into the throes of my alcoholism. So for me to hear that I had inoperable cancer, I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't sad and I wasn't angry. I was relieved. I was relieved because I was already taking too much flack from other people about my drinking. I had actually made an effort, sort of an effort to quit on my own. And then when I got cancer, inoperable cancer, I was like bottoms up, because who's going to fuck with me? That's exactly what my attitude was. I didn't even have to hide it anymore, because who's going to mess with poor me who has inoperable cancer? And, that was 11 years ago. And I've been living with cancer ever since. And the thing about it is that I will likely die with this cancer, but I will not die from it. So climbing into a bottle, it wasn't because of cancer. Cancer was my excuse. And I'm going to fast forward again just a couple more years. I take the same pill. We literally have done nothing to treat that cancer besides follow it. And in 2016, I was getting a massage. And at this point, I'm 2 years sober. Life is good. I had just been promoted at work. I was dating a new girl who's my now wife. And I was getting a massage one Thursday afternoon. And she felt the back of my head. And all of a sudden she goes, "Hey, what's that?" And I just knew. And after a couple different biopsies and ultrasounds, they confirmed it was cancer, and they had to take it out. But this time I didn't know anything about it. And you got to understand something too. My approach to this is not medical. I leave the medicine to the doctors. I leave the science to the doctors. I show up when I need to, do what I'm told, and the rest of the time, I'm just trying to live my life to the best of my ability. So even all that time I was playing a victim, I didn't want the poor me's. I just wanted to ignore it and pretend it didn't exist. And that's what was different in 2016, though, is I started to adopt this attitude of, you can only get cancer so many times and not die. And I just started feeling really scared. And I would tell myself this every day, like on the way to work, like, this has to be the one, right? Is this the one that's going to get me? What am I even bothering for? And I just kept digging myself in this deeper and deeper hole of despair. And keep in mind, I am the only one putting me there. Because when they finally did the surgery and they took that nodule out of my head, there was no additional follow-up. It was just gone. It was done. And I got the first all clear I had in the 11 years that I was dealing with cancer. And all of a sudden I found myself in this spot where I had just been such a victim. And it was 3 weeks after that where my boss walks into my office and he says, "Hey, I'm doing a Spartan race in a couple weeks and I want you to do it with me." And I looked at him and I go, "No, no, fuck you. 10-mile trail run, bro, like in the woods with mud and obstacles. No, like I have no interest in being that uncomfortable." And I went home that night and I reflected upon everything that I just told you and everything else that I had been through, in particular, the attitudes that I had. And I was like, you know what? I am uncomfortable. I already am uncomfortable. I am sitting here in a life that most people would probably desire, and yet I'm uncomfortable in my own skin. I had been through so much, and that's when I had realized I had not overcome my adversity. I didn't beat cancer. I survived. And at that point, it wasn't enough for me. I needed to do something different. I needed a change. And so that's when I took him up on the offer. And I agree with kind of what Lance Armstrong brings up in his book, is that I don't believe people beat cancer. Medicine beats cancer. Science beats cancer. God beats cancer. A little love and luck beat cancer. Our job is to live and just live the best we can as long as we can, and not let the distractions take away from the life that we have. And that's the attitude that I began to adopt as I started to learn how to overcome things and how to just live my best life in the face of adversity.
Wow. I'm actually at a loss for words, brother. Your perspective, your mental attitude is awesome, like beyond awesome. I can remember going through so many points about the why me. This is bullshit. I've done nothing wrong. There's people out there raping and killing people, living healthy as horses, getting 3 meals a day, whether they be in jail or out of jail. And here I am doing nothing. And being like, I had throat cancer. So I had a stage 3 T4 tumor in my throat. So it pretty much closed my throat, kind of like a shellfish allergy, for lack of a better term. 35 rounds of radiation, 3 rounds of chemo. Couldn't do surgery because they would have to pull my whole voice box out.
See what I mean about the comparing thing? Like mine was pretty easy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, no, it wasn't. Yours wasn't easy, but it's just different, and there's one thing that, and I'm glad you started by saying, you know what, Dan, that's the wrong way to talk about it, because my wife and I talk about it all the time, about the journey. Everybody's journey is different. Like the C word is the same because it's a scary friggin' word, but everybody's journey is different. Just like in sales, everyone's journey is different. We look over at the salesperson that's crushing it and we're like, oh my God, they're so lucky. No, they're not lucky. They work hard, and they maybe work harder than us, and they maybe try strategies, philosophies that we don't try. And going through the journey, I can tell you, just being in the hospital and speaking to other people that are going through the journey, it's that I believe, anyways, when your perspective goes from victim to, okay, this is what it is. Let's live every day to the fullest, and even if we're incrementally getting better, because this was one of my big issues, was I got a serious throat infection after. So my esophagus collapsed. They had to stretch it. I got pneumonia 5 times. I was literally in the ICU on my deathbed through two times. Third wasn't really on my deathbed, but I was in the ICU for a DKA for my diabetes, because I being type 1 diabetic as well, which is interesting because you and I both got it. You got it in your mid-20s, type 1 diabetes?
Yeah, I was 27.
Yeah, so I was 32. So again, really odd for, well, it all depends, right? Because type 1 diabetes is juvenile diabetes, so it just tells me I'm a big kid. Probably.
I just don't know I just know anybody who didn't get it as an adult. That's like,
yes, yeah, and so it's this. the way that your mental positioning was, I think personally, I agree with you. Medicine is medicine. Let the doctors do what they need to do. But I think a big part for us, and I'd love your take on it, is when we switch from that victim to that, you know what? Okay, this has happened. I can't change it. A, can I find some good in it? And B, can I live my life to the fullest with the energy, the strength, the positioning, the mindset that I have now? And I found personally when that changed, Nick, I started to get better. Things started to change because everything just kept collapsing on me, right? As I was sick. So I don't know if did you ever experience that kind of pivot point in your treatment?
It wasn't cancer though, because cancer was just another brick in the wall.
Got it.
And it was something that, so early on, I think there is a benefit to embracing the victim. This is going to sound a little contrarian, and here's why: because I
Okay.
did my entire life, but I used it to build up defenses. It made me tough. Exterior.
Mhm.
It made me gritty. It made,
Can you explain that?
yeah, it was sort of like this, when I said I grew up a child of neglect, and this is something I didn't realize until very, very recently either, the profound impact of my parents' divorce and really just them not being there for me growing up and had that had on me now. And I realized that I had grown up with this fear of rejection, this fear of not fitting in, of not being accepted.
Mm.
And a lot of people, when they do that, they become perfectionists, people pleasers. They just they're always trying to get people to like them. I went the other way. I was like, oh, fuck you. I don't need your love. And but because that attitude though is still, you can't feel that way unless you're already a victim. And, you
Yes.
can't be mad at your attackers unless you're accepting that you're a victim. And I think there was a point where it's kind of like, you've heard the expression, don't hate on your demons. They were there for you when no one else was.
No, I've never heard that, but
Well, I just made it up. I'm
oh,
just
did you
kidding.
just make
No,
that up
no,
right
it's
now?
like,
You got me
I've
there.
heard something like that. Like, like, I understand why you're reluctant to let go of your demons. They were there for you when no one else was. And for me, my attitude was what was there for me, and I fostered that for a long time. But the thing is that it's kind of like with my drinking, for the longest time, for years, I could drink 30 drinks to somebody else's one and be perfectly functional. It was a superpower until until it started to turn on me slowly and work against me. And so that same sort of walls that I was building up, they became a prison and they began to poison me inside, because when you're that gritty, you just become an asshole eventually. And
Mm.
you don't help, you don't look for help, you don't help, you just become this lone wolf, and it becomes so much of a fake exterior. And you can only do that with this hollow inside for so long until you begin to crumble. And that's why at some point you have to make this shift. And my first year or so at obstacle course racing, I still had, and again, I hadn't realized this, I had not overcome the victim mindset yet. I was just starting to punch back, and I loved what it did for me. And I could actually see it in other people, because people would tell me, like, I remember this guy, I barely knew him. He was in the IT department, and I was a bit of a bulldog, and I had some clout at the place we worked at. I was a VP of sales. What this guy said to me was something people didn't say to me. All right. And he was like, I really like your attitude lately, Nick. I always thought you were sort of a dick before. And I'm like, you know who the fuck you're talking to? But then I was like, like, but I'll be honest, man, I respected him so much. That was like one of the first conversations we even had. And I was like, huh, interesting. And I just started to like
Mm.
myself a little bit better. And I was like, I want more of that. So I'm going to do more positive stuff. Right. And so I just start living this life. And I'm doing more of these obstacle course races where I'm defying my diabetes, where I'm maximizing the fact that I'm alive today. Um, I'm going to continue on with that, but I want to go a sidebar story for a second. Is
Go for it.
when I talk about comparing, my first couple of years of going to Moffitt Cancer Center here in Tampa, I'd wear sunglasses. I didn't like to look anybody in the eye. I didn't. I told myself it's because I didn't want to feel like a patient and I just didn't want to be there. But I came to realize it's because I was comparing and I felt like I didn't belong. And here's what I mean by that. I was walking out, and I can't say the same for everybody else that we talked to. I was leaving that
Ooh.
place, and I can't say the same for
Mhm.
everybody else I was going to meet. But here's the part that I eventually learned is I shouldn't feel bad for that. You shouldn't feel bad for being alive. We shouldn't feel bad for sitting here. But I do believe now we have a responsibility to help others who are having all those same feelings that I did. And whether or not I had fingernail cancer or throat cancer or heart cancer or something, like, I know what it feels like to hear those words for the first time. You have
Mm.
cancer, and how the entire world beneath you is all of a sudden, it's just not the same. And so I fast forward a little bit back into the story where I'm taking control over my life. And the more I'm doing these things that I didn't think I could do, I'm feeling the ground beneath me again. Right. And then it was July 15th of 2017. And I'd been doing this for about 6 months, and my life was completely different. I had just hit my 3rd year sobriety anniversary the day before, and I'm sitting at a red light, and all of a sudden, boom, car comes out of fucking nowhere. Full speed, hits me from behind. Her car goes flipping over like 4 times, like straight out of the movies. I was in a lifted Jeep Wrangler, so my car moved about 6 inches, but the impact was pretty substantial. And that's where I got some of my herniated discs. And that same day, I went home and my cat of 12 years died. I had nerve damage from the car accident. And so it's like literally everything that I thought was like building this new life and this new version of myself. And all of a sudden it was being taken away from me. Like, I mean, I was heartbroken over my cat. I'm deeply passionate over my pets. I couldn't train. I couldn't actually like lift my arm. Like, I had nerve damage, and the back
Mm.
pain was just horrible. And all of a sudden I'm falling back into that victim mindset, that resentful, why did you do this to me? F you world type of thing. And I was standing one morning, I was like, well, I got to keep training. I got to do something. It had been about 2 months, and I'm standing outside of my back patio, and I lived in a house on Tampa Bay at the time.
What made you decide that
I
you had to
didn't
go
know how
back
to
and keep training?
stop yet. I kept saying I'm going to quit, but it's like you keep waking up. It was that simple. You just do the next thing. And I hadn't made a full commitment to like doing something yet, but I wanted to train. I wanted to see if I could get back. And I remember I was doing a warm up, and it was actually storming like off in the distance a little bit. I mean, this was like straight out of the movies, this scene. All right. If I could see myself, if I could picture this was like my hero moment, because I'm standing there, and that's when I had to decide, victim, or victor. And I was like, I don't want to be a victim anymore. And I'll tell you what, I don't want to be a survivor anymore either. Because what's the point of that? There has to be more to life than just getting by. There has to be more to life than just surviving. There has to be. Otherwise, what the fuck are we doing here? I'm screaming this out loud. My neighbors are like, what's going on? 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm screaming off my dock. But I had to decide. And I was like, you know what? I am not going to be defined by all the shit that happened to me. I'm not. That's not the life I want to live. I want to see what kind of trouble I can get into. I want to know who I can be. And that was the defining moment, because for those 6 months, I had a glimmer of what life could be like when I challenge myself, when I seek discomfort, when I use what I've been through as a fuel. And to have it almost taken away from me, that was a lesson that I needed to know. Like, I'm all in now. That was my defining moment of like, this is the life I'm going to choose. And I literally chose my hard. I know I told you 5 stories in one there.
No, brother, this you're helping me process a lot, believe it or not, and I'm sure you hear that from a lot of people. Um, I could tell you when I got the cancer notification, when I got told, I think I was numb for like 3 days. I don't think I thought. I don't think I processed. I don't think I did anything for close to 4 days. I don't know about you when you got your first AFYI, this is the big C word. How did you, I'm going to say react, because I think at that point we're not even responding yet. We're reacting because it's just all so harsh. I mean, the fact to hear your perspective, to see how, I mean, and obviously for everybody watching and listening, we all know this is a process that you went through, right, Nick? It wasn't as if like this was a process. There was really bad times until you finally realized, okay, I need to do something. You know what I mean? I mean, we all, I think, realize that. So let's fast forward. Did you ever have the problem of your body not being able to keep up to your mind when you were recovering?
Um, I'm going to say the answer to that question is yes, all the time, to a point.
Yeah.
But I believe that the mind controls the body. And, I mean, there are some extreme examples out there, but although I'll tell you, there were times and I did this out of stubbornness, not grit. Now I do things that I'm not supposed to for a lot of reasons. Like, I mean, I have
I
7
love that.
herniated discs, man.
That's
Like,
really good.
there's no doctor in the world who signs off on me doing what I do. And I love that. That's fuel for me because I know I can. I know I can live life. Sometimes it hurts, but whatever. Life hurts. Who said it wasn't going to? And I know that, to your point, I'm helping people by doing it, and I'm helping people by sharing it. To me, that is all the medicine, all the fuel, all the strength, all the power, all the oxygen, all the air, all the sunlight, literally, that I need to get through on any given day and any given thing. But I do remember the second time I got sick. So the first time I wasn't really happy in my life. I was in a job I didn't care for. I was living in a small apartment. It was 4 degrees in Massachusetts. It was this time of year. It was January of 2005. We had just been hit with another 19-foot snowstorm, and I don't know, $5 to my name. And I was like, good, give me cancer. Let me just be more depressed. But the second time I got it,
Gives you a reason now,
yeah, right?
right?
Like,
In your own mind, like a justification, for lack of a better term, in your own mind.
and I think that's a good point too, because the whole comparison thing, like, I remember a buddy of mine back when I was doing that job. I was in sales, man. My life didn't suck, like, come on. I had a good job. I had a place to live. I had food and friends, and, but I had a friend of mine who worked 20-hour days just to keep up. Like, there's always somebody who's living a life that you don't want to live. But come 2007, I was living a life of my dreams, man. I was in Florida. I had just been promoted. Like, just a lot of things were going well. And then I get cancer again, and I'm like, what the shit? Like, don't distract me now. But I'll tell you, there's something else too. I actually referenced Lance Armstrong's book, It's Not About the Bike, a couple different times. And I don't care if you're a fan of his as an athlete or not, because there's a mindset shift in there, and there's certain things that that I take away. And the part that I really took away was that we are responsible for living our life, and how we get treated is also our decision. And what I mean by that is, I was being mistreated by a doctor's office. I was scared out of my mind. I didn't know if I was going to be alive for my wedding in a couple months, let alone if and when surgery might be. I was getting no communication. I was getting attitudes. Like, I mean, it was just, these were not good people. And there came a point where there was actually something wrong in the EKG, and they canceled my surgery 2 days before surgery. And they didn't tell me anything. So I'm like trying to figure out through 7 layers of doctors what's going on. When's the next test? I'm like, I just want answers, man. Just give me a plan. Like, tell me, like, let me try to figure out how I do my part and live my life. And I was met with just so much attitude and resistance that, well, I lost my mind. I mean, I was seeing red, and I call up the doctor and I go, hey, I got a better idea. You're fucking fired. 1 day before the surgery is supposed to happen, I fired my surgeon. And I go, I want my medical records. You put it in writing, it takes 4 to 6 weeks. And I said, I'll be there in 32 minutes. You have them, or you might as well call the cops, because I'm leaving with them. Like, I don't recommend anybody take this approach. I was not behaving well. This was not a good human being moment, but I had made the decision that I am not going to be mistreated by the people in the medical community. I don't need that in order to survive. And I'm like, I'm responsible for how I live my life and who I let in it. And I'm not going to be this helpless victim, because that's what they were making me feel like, helpless and hopeless. And so I went up there, and they had it ready. They sure did. They were like, here. They had my medical records. I went out, and that's when I was referred into Moffitt Cancer Center, which is one of the best hospitals, cancer hospitals in the country. And so, yeah, my approach may have been immature and not very good behavior, but I had to take something back. I had to take some ownership back. And as a result, I was put into a place that I think is one of the best places you can get treated. And I don't necessarily even know medically. I just know as a human being, they allowed me to just be the human being and be the patient, and didn't have to. You should never, ever have to feel like you're begging somebody for your life, especially somebody who's getting paid hourly, to not care about it.
Everything happens for a reason, Nick.
Sometimes the reason we don't want, but
1000%. And you know what? You were out of place now. Awesome. So share with us this then. What are some of the philosophies, some of the strategies? What is your modus operandi, for lack of a better term, that you have now when it comes to business, when it comes to life? And if you can, frame it for our audience in more of a sales perspective,
Yep.
and just kind of let's leave them with some serious value. Because I think thinking through your story as an individual, and I don't care what you've been through, everyone watching and listening, I think it's irrelevant. I think we all have these, for lack of a better term, as Oprah says, these aha moments. And they can come in the form of listening to one of Nick's stories. Hell, they can even come in the form of standing in the grocery line and looking at an article and something just sparks something in you, right? So you guys are going to have these aha moments. But Nick, share with us kind of what this has brought you to a newfound philosophy, how it could using this philosophy can impact salespeople. And then if you can, in closing, just share how people can get a hold of you, because I think your story is your story is one of the most powerful stories when it comes to just thinking through life in general and what you want out of it. Because, you sat down, you took it, you got beat, you got back up, you got beat again. You probably sat down, for lack of a better term, now that you're thinking about it, longer than you had wanted to, but you got back up. And that's the main point, right? So I'll stop rambling, but yes, go for it.
You know what? Let me give you I got to tell everything in stories. So
yes, well, everybody remembers stories, Nick. So
in 2005, I was actually fired from my sales job, and it was because I was caught interviewing for another position in the middle of the workday. And I was very resentful against a person who fired me for years. They had every right to. We're actually close and have a friendship now, but I was very resentful from that person firing me. And I thought about it for a long time. And it was like, I hated him. I hated the company. I hated that feeling. Right. And I'm going to tell you that because let's fast forward to October of this past year, where I got a call at 3:30 in the afternoon from my boss. I've been working in logistics. I've been working for this company for a couple of years, and some things that happened with this company that adversely affected my role. And then I was basically put back into a sales role, and I was not performing, which I'm going to talk about that in a second too. But it was my boss, 3:30 on a Wednesday, and she called to fire me. I immediately called my wife, and she says, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And I go, "Hun, you know how I'm constantly worried about money?" She goes, "Yeah." "You know how I'm constantly worried about my job?" She goes, "Yeah." I go, "Now I only got one thing to worry about." My attitude from one termination forever ago, 20 years ago, to right now was different. Back then, I was resentful for months. Within 15 hours of being fired, I announced to the world that I'm a motivational speaker, author, and a coach. No resentment, no feeling bad for myself, no wasting time. I am driven with so much purpose, it is flying out the windows. And that's the lesson, is purpose alignment. People talk about why all the time, but most people don't actually understand what that means, right? I talked to a friend of mine a couple weeks ago, stuck in his career. And I'm like, "What's your why right now? What's your purpose?" Right? And he's like, "Oh, I'm saving for retirement, 401k, and this and that." And I just said, stop, bullshit. And he's like, "What do you mean?" I go, "Because if that were true, you wouldn't be on the phone with me. That might have got you where you are now, but it's not going to get you there. Our purpose evolves as we grow and change." So for the last 2 years, I've been in a job that I didn't care for. It wasn't fulfilling to me anymore because I knew I wanted to do this. I published my book in 2021. And ever since then, I'm getting the conversations like this coming to me. People were telling me things resonate with them and help them. And I go, "My God, this is what I need to be doing." But when I was in my job, I worked that job like it was the most passionate thing in the planet. Like I cared about my job more than anything, even though I didn't, because my purpose was aligned, because I knew that I couldn't just snap my fingers and become a motivational speaker. I knew that I needed to work to support my family, my home. I know I needed to put money in the bank. I know I needed to continue to take time to perfect my craft, to network with other people, to learn things, right? Everything that I was doing was aligned with my ultimate purpose. And my purpose is to overcome every obstacle and inspire others that they can too. I say this 15 times a day. And so that means when I'm prospecting or cold calling or dealing with 4,000 people calling the same person in the same 5 minutes in the industry, when I'm feeling that my efforts are fruitless, or I don't like the job, or I don't like my boss, or I don't like the company, none of that matters, because my success in my job, my success in my activity, my commitment and passion in my activity are all the steps that I take to pursue my purpose. It doesn't matter what you're doing. What matters is why you're doing it. So if you're selling copiers out there, why are we selling the copiers? Why are we waking up in the day? And when you can align that purpose, there is nothing that you can't get through, whether it be in sales, just business in general, or day-to-day life.
I love that, Nick. How can people get a hold of you?
I am everywhere on the internet at Stride,
I love
Stride
that
Motivation. LinkedIn under my name, Facebook under my name, but I am on every social media platform at Stride Motivation. Also, my website is stridemotivation.com, but the nuggets are going to be in the social media. And the book, Through the Fire, is on Amazon, and it will be free the last week of February for download.
Awesome. To everybody watching and listening, I hope you got something from. I know I got a million things from today. I love the fact, Nick, when I asked you for the philosophy for sales, why over everything else. I'm a firm believer that our purpose and why we do what we do, if that's not bigger than our roadblocks, we're always going to give up. Always, always, always. And a lot of people say, yeah, but my purpose is, well, I want to make money. There's always more. And I don't know if you've ever heard of the 9 levels deep.
No.
A big thing that Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi does. I'm in a mastermind program with them, and it was 9 levels deep, and it's why. What's your why? Well, my why is this. Why is that? And then you answer that. And then with that answer, they're like, well, why that answer? And you're digging deep. And like, by the time you get to the 9th one, you've cried, you've laughed, you've rethought about your entire life philosophy. And you finally get to this why, that as soon as you see it, it sparks a 4-alarm blaze. I mean, everything that Tony talks about when he talks about your state and your stance, it's like, whoosh, I often feel it's like the transformation from Tony Stark to Iron Man. Do you know what I mean? Where it's all of a sudden you have all these tools and technology at your fingertips, and it's just from your mind. And, everything's visual in front of you. And all of a sudden it's kind of like you see the obstacles before they hit. And it's these it's a really wicked transformation. I suggest every one of you check it out. But make sure you go and find Nick, Strive Motivation. Go find him, get the book. And I'm going to say one more thing. Do it now. Because, Nick, this last 40 minutes or so that we've been talking, brother, game changer, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been fun.